Hey, everybody. Welcome to Southland's podcast for parents, where we're trying to do is build into parents, impress upon parents what must be built into and impressed upon kids. I almost did the locker room intro there on accident. It's still back there.
It's still in there, buddy.
Yeah. So that's what we're here for. We still want to talk about the right things in the right ways.
Absolutely.
Regardless of the podcast. I won't accidentally do the women's intro.
Really?
That's not ingrained.
They were singing
me.
earlier. Y'all missed it.
We were singing. I mean, it could happen. Yeah. I'm not afraid to break out the falsetto.
Hey, listen, you do it a lot.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Hey,
It's
well, I don't
one
know
of
how
my
impressive
favorite
it is.
things.
I'm just
I love
willing.
it.
But you step out. Yeah, you step out and you sing. It's,
I'm secure. I know who I am in Christ.
That's right. Listen, unto the Lord.
If you don't like my singing, that's on you. That's
right.
Fine. Well, hey, this is, I don't know how many episodes we've done. We talked about this book, Bad Therapy. I will say there's a book we've referenced on here a few times called The Coddling of the American Mind that we've talked about. That author, Jonathan Haidt, has a new book out I haven't read yet. But it's in a similar vein, and so I'm going to be checking that out here soon. I guess I shouldn't just recommend it right out of the gate because I haven't read it yet. But his previous work was really, really good, so I'm going to check that out as well. Let me read this passage for today. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16 through 18, and we'll kind of go from there. It says, "So we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day, for this light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. As we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal." One of these authors I've been talking to our staff about lately, a guy named Todd Bolsinger, he's written a book called Tempered Resilience, something like that. It's about resilience. Anyway, one of the things he talks about is how resilience really is about being both strong and flexible. You can't be overly brittle or you break, or you can't be overly flexible or you'll just cave. You'll be too soft. And the great temptation for leaders is to either lose heart or lose nerve. If you lose heart, you get so hardened that you're not responsive, you're not compassionate, you lose sympathy and empathy for others. But at the same time, if you lose nerve, you'll back down, you'll cower, you'll refuse to speak the truth, you'll lose your ability to even be helpful to people because you won't be confrontational in any way, shape, or form. And so thinking in the context of raising kids, and really more so in the spirit of this podcast, like how to build resilience in ourselves so that our children will at least see what it looks like to be resilient. What stands out to you guys? And I'll give you this definition of resilience, and then I'll let you guys kind of jump in here. This is again from Todd Bolsinger. He says, "Resilience is the capacity to maintain core purpose and integrity in the face of dramatically changing circumstances." What are your all's thoughts?
One of the things that I talked about this last week, so I'm just going to talk about it again. But allowing your children or yourself even to problem solve on their own, I think is what I think of when I think about what resilience looks like. Because there are small risks when you're little, right? Like allowing them to figure something out on their own. There's minimal risk to that. They may not nail it the first time, but they're going to figure it out, problem solve,
big,
whatever.
Stakes aren't too high.
Yes, but as parents, we have to not jump in and just take over for them. So I think that's one of the things, like, I can think of a million times being on the playground and seeing my kid fall or like get in an argument with somebody or whatever. And my gut is to want to rush in, and like help.
Put that kid in the chokehold.
Yeah. But actually, it's been better for them to be able to work through it themselves. Now, I'm not saying if something awful happened, you can bet I would be right there. But, allowing them to kind of figure it out on their own, that's something that I've had to learn instead of just jumping in and doing it, because they don't learn anything if I just solve all their problems for them. And that's definitely not building that in them or nurturing that or fostering that. So
one of the things I heard Jonathan Haidt talk about was we've got a generation of kids that have been supervised at all times. And so they're not only supervised when they go visit a friend, play dates and all that kind of stuff, but they're very supervised on the playground at school And so anytime there's any kind of, conflict or anything, there's an adult who intervenes before they're able to kind of work it out on their own. And it's actually crippled kids' ability to be able to resolve conflict, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does.
We mean well when we want to help them.
Yeah.
We want to give them wisdom, insight. We want to protect them. We want to shield them. We can't isolate them. We can insulate some of this. But just like you were talking about, helping them solve problems. It's like when a child doesn't bring their work home, they got to go figure it out.
Yes.
Or they need to send an email to the teacher.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Dad, are you going to send an email? No. You're going to send an email and say that you forgot your work or you can't, or, hey, you were sick and so you need to find out when this is due. What do you think that you need to do? Or how should you handle this? Or how should you stand up for yourself? Or how can you respond in a courageous way to address the problem or resolve an issue? Yeah. That's super important. And we got to let them fail. I mentioned Ross Barnett maybe last time, I don't know. But, when I had a teenager, he's going, hey, listen, you got to give her room. You got to start cutting ropes and let her dictate some of this. Because if you wait for her to dictate this, she can't regulate.
Yeah.
Because she's just used to all of us doing that for her. And so it's like, hey, what's your plan for this weekend? Where are you going? What are you going to do? What time do you think you're going to be home? And again, we can veto that. But But the reality is we need to do that. And the other side of the some of us who grew up in crazy and want it to be different, we can over-accommodate for them. We can make extra meals. We can, hey, you don't like this. It's like, well, we end up making 3 meals for one meal.
Yep.
Short order cook.
Yeah, and it's like, and if we always rescue or we accommodate, then they will always look for us to solve problems, or they can't think critically for themselves, which is this is a big part of this is helping them navigate. Because, again, we can give them some of it, but if we do everything for our kids, then they won't learn and they'll rely on and never quit.
Yes.
So.
And then when you put that, I'm thinking about like their faith. That's one of the things that I was thinking about when we were researching and talking about all this earlier. When I think about my kids being in their 20s or whatever and encountering folks who don't know the Lord or who are questioning why they believe something, or they run into a professor or whatever it is, if they haven't figured out how to stand up for things and figure things out on their own, they're going to be at a total loss and super vulnerable to whatever this person in authority is telling them, because that's what they're used to. Yeah. And I don't want that for my kids.
That's a really good point. Yeah, we've run into that. In youth ministry for years, that was always our challenge, is trying to go, okay, how do we help these students take this faith and own it before they run off to college and they get in a classroom setting, either with some aggressive professor, who makes fun of people who are followers of Jesus, or maybe makes good arguments or brings up things that they've never heard before. So
never thought
so
about
what you're basically saying is, like, there's a challenge of going, your faith needs to be tested so your faith can be made stronger. And so that was something we used to have to wrestle with as student ministry guys and kids ministry people and things like that. But really, at the end of the day, that responsibility lies at the feet of parents. And so, what we talk about and how we talk about it around the kitchen table and around our dining room tables and things like that, as we walk along the road and while we're, in minivans going to events, is really, really important, And so, as opposed to being dismissive about challenges to our faith, how do we help kids recognize, okay, that's a question people have, or that's a challenge people have. Have you ever even really thought about it? And we need to talk about it.
Well, and you can live on one of two extremes. You can either live on the, I'm just going to take care of all of it for them, or I'm going to go, hey, it's hard knocks, figure it out. And it's like, it's not that, and it's definitely not rescue and everything. And so it's going, how do you help give kids perspective and give them the right questions to ask and get them to process things in the right way? That's super critical for them, because if not, they're just always going to rely on us for it, So
it's interesting when you look back at that definition. I read the capacity to maintain core purpose. In other words, I know what I'm about and what I'm supposed to do, and integrity. I know who I am. I'm not divided or fragmented in the face of dramatically changing circumstances. So, dramatically changing circumstances kids and people, period, experience change as loss. So when something's changing, that means you're losing something.
Yeah.
So an easy example, you've been through this, I've been through this, Scott, moving, with kids. It's important to understand, they may even be excited about moving or where they're going, but at the same time, they're experiencing loss. And we see that with leaders. Some people are more eager to move towards change, some are less eager to move towards change. But when you understand that people experience change as loss, that can help you engage with them differently. So maybe let's talk a little bit about how, when things have changed, whether that's switching schools or whether that's moving to a new house, like's going on in your world right now, or moving across the country or whatever that may be, how can we help and model for our kids both understanding, yes, I understand you're losing something, but this is an opportunity to grow.
We just had this discussion.
Well, there you go.
It's so funny.
Fresh bread.
Well, because we have a swing set at our house that my kids really like, but there's not a place for it at the new place. I'm like, you're getting a pool, so
It's a good trade.
maybe don't worry about it. But it's like it's almost like a little glimpse of grief for them, because and I know a swing set sounds like a silly thing. There's more to it. There's a lot more that's happened that I think that they're not able to really tap into.
There's a whole bunch of things that have happened out there on that swing set.
Yes.
Or the swing set just may be
symbolic.
Exactly.
Of,
Yes, exactly. So, and my daughter was just so upset. Like, she started to cry because she was just like, I don't understand why we can't just take it with us, And I was basically just walking her through, I know how you feel. I understand. And I said, I'm giving up things too. You have to understand we're all sacrificing a little bit, but look at what you're gaining on the other side. We need to focus on that. Acknowledge, this is what you're leaving, but here's what's coming. We can be excited about these things, And I was like, nothing else changes. We're all still together. Here are the constants. So I think reminding her of what was staying the same helped her in that moment. Because everything else felt like it was a little bit out of control. So
You're taking that poor girl's swing set.
Listen, that swing set's going to be a metaphor for life.
It is. It's funny. You think about it. Like, my daughter was just back in Colorado not that long ago, and she got engaged while she was out there and everything.
Congrats,
and
buddy.
he
didn't touch that. He just kept going.
I'm already in wedding world, bro. And so, I know at one point she drove her fiance around in our old kind of stomping ground, and you do that. You go back to places, you drive past. The times I've been back there, I've always made sure to try to drive past a couple of our old houses. And, you look at trees. And I remember I replanted that tree 4 times because I kept killing it. And that's why it's still only 3 feet tall.
Man.
That kind of, I've got a black thumb, man. No green thumb in this family. Things don't grow that if I touch them. But they do, there's a sentimental attachment. But when we think of sentimental things, we're thinking about things we lost that are symbolic of the passage of time, people and transitions and all that kind of stuff. And it's just painful.
It is. I think there's also positives to that, though, too, because I used to live in Nashville, and going back is very nostalgic for me now because I remember the good things about it. But I've moved past that point of grief now. And so now you can just kind of celebrate it and focus on those good things, which I think is great, which is basically what Landry was doing.
A good point, because I definitely felt that way the first few times I went back to Colorado. It was painful. There was a lot of grief still. It was weird. It felt really strange. And now I'm at a point when I go back, it's like, oh man, I can enjoy. I can absolutely enjoy. But you have to push through that.
Those steps.
It's like, if you said, okay, we'll figure out a way to bring that old swing set over here and we'll put it in the side yard and over the sidewalk, and the HOA is going to call every day, or what I mean?
So mad.
Or you can look at your kids and go, I understand this is painful, and you can do this. You really can do this, and you push through it. They'll get stronger.
Change. I mean, the Bible talks about seasons. Life is only always about seasons, and so. And we get to live in Kentucky where there's 4, and sometimes they kind of bleed on each other.
Like doing right now.
I mean, like it's doing right. Yeah, snow the other day on Monday, and 70s. So, but these seasons are part of. They end, and then new things begin, and so teaching our kids and reminding ourselves that there are seasons, and you don't want to be stuck in the wrong season. That's not good. I mean, and so processing whatever it is that you're feeling, grieving well, and then moving toward, well, what does God have for me? It's reframing life and reminding yourself of, hey, He's been faithful in spring and summer and fall.
Winter, spring, summer, the fall. See,
nice.
There's the singing. I was just waiting for the moment.
And Jesus says, I'll be there. Gosh, that's terrible.
Poor JR. Poor JR. He's like, I can't mix these dudes. I'm used
add a
to
little
working
verb
with
to that,
pros.
that'd be great.
Every cat in Lexington just raised its head.
Right.
But I mean, He's the God of all seasons. You think He's not going to be faithful in the winter? Of course, you know. But it's reminding ourselves and helping our kids begin to understand, and whether they're little, just like what you're dealing with, or transition from 5th grade to 6th grade, or you got one that's graduated from high school trying to figure out what's next. These are all seasons, and so you can always look at. I mean, that you talk about glass half full, half empty. You should recognize whatever it is, be realistic, but grieve the stuff that you need to, but then go, man, does he see me? Mm-hmm. Does he know? Mm-hmm. Does he have Jeremiah 29:11? Does he have plans for me? Mm-hmm. And so can I just lean in? And again, I may not get it when I want it, and I may not understand it fully, but He's sovereign, and He knows where best and how best to help us take the right steps.
So I'm super infatuated with these 3 phrases we're going to talk about right now. So, I'm applying them everywhere. Our staff's having to endure this infatuation. And then, so the 3 phrases are stay calm, stay connected, and stay the course. And so when the heat gets turned up and change is happening and loss is being experienced and challenges are being faced, we kind of have these opportunities where we can do those 3 things: stay calm, stay connected, stay the course, or we can bail on the process. We can figure out a way to, or at least try to extricate ourselves from the heat, which cheats us out of the strengthening and the growth, the resilience, all of that can potentially happen when the heat is turned up. So, you just think back. I look back and go, okay, that was a hard season, but I pushed through it, learned, grew. Now I'm a different person. Mm-hmm. That's true for every person on the planet. That's how you get stronger. Mm-hmm. So I had we had a staff meeting where I walked through those 3 things with everybody, and just talked about when you've got some sort of internal struggle or some sort of dynamic, either with people within our church or people on our staff, you've got some kind of conflict or whatever that may be, you have the opportunity to stay calm. Don't be a slave to your emotions. Yep. Stay connected. In other words, don't isolate yourself from people that you're in community with. Don't take your ball and go home. Yeah. And then stay the course. Remember the mission. Remember what we're in this for, and that helps us stay in the game, so to speak. So right before this, as we're recording this, it's spring baseball season and all that. I had my oldest son. He plays at West Jessamine High School. We had all the senior boys over to the house, and it's right before the season kicked off, and we had a steak dinner for him and stuff like that. And so said, hey, man, I don't normally do this. I'm not your coach, but watched you guys for a long time. Before we get to eat these steaks, you're going to have to listen to me for 3 minutes, So I gave him.
I have shagged too many balls.
That's right. I've painted those lines, put those bases out, sat in the cold. So you got to listen to me for a few minutes. I love all these boys, and so I was able to just, tell them that. But also, I looked at him and said, hey, when I'm looking at your schedule, you guys got a brutal schedule this year. Do you know who has the highest potential to beat you, in my opinion? And it was funny because they're all in their mind, they're going through the schedule and thinking, and they were all just super quiet. And I finally just said, you. Yeah. And you saw this kind of light bulb go off. Yeah. And so, man, you guys have potential to be really, really good. But if I were trying to beat you, all I would try to do is get you fighting with each other over there in that dugout when things go wrong. And so here's the 3 things. When you face adversity, and you 100% will, you have the opportunity to stay calm. Don't freak out. Don't be led by your emotions. Stay connected. Lean it. Don't get mad at each other and start pointing fingers. Mm-hmm. Stay connected. Encourage one another. And stay the course. Remember, there's still game to be played. Yeah. Let's try to win this thing. So I'm not going to take credit for this, but it was super funny because the first 2 games of the season, they have the number 5 team in the state, Lexington Catholic, roll in, and we're just getting killed. Yeah. Just getting killed. Yeah. It's 8-2 going into the bottom of the 7th, and you play 7 games in high school. We
7 innings.
Yeah, 7 innings.
Yeah.
What did I say? 7 games.
Yeah,
It's not a series. That would take a while. It's not tennis.
Yeah.
8-2 going to the bottom of the 7th. We got 1 out. My son has struggled going in, struck out like 3 times, something like that. And he gets up and he hits a 2-run or 3-run home run, So it's like, oh, well, okay. Well, at least there's a little glimmer of like, okay, that. But you're still kind of going, okay, but the scoreboard still says 8-5. We got 1 out. It's bottom of the 7th. We mount this rally, tie it up, and end up winning in the 9th inning.
That's awesome.
Like, whoa. And so they literally got to practice those 3 things because things were dire. Next night, Henry Clay, we're down by 5 runs going into the bottom of the 7th. And we mount this comeback, tie it up, and then
Nichols yelling, "Stay calm,
stay
connected, stay the course."
And what's super funny is like I actually hear some of the guys saying some of that in the dugout.
That's cool, man.
When they come out of the dugout, they're like fist bumping me, going, "Mr. Nichols, we did it." I'm like, this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I'm a genius.
I know I look like a genius over here on the sidelines, but this is what I'm talking about. So we go to the extra innings, and then
awesome,
we get it. We get the opportunity. Eli comes up and he hits this walk off the wall to win the game, and they all mob him and all that kind of thing. And as we speak, they're 4-0. They've been through all this challenge and adversity, but it has been cool to watch. Like, and I know that there'll be losses and things like that coming. It's just a metaphor of we're presented with these opportunities where we can quit, where we can just give up, fragment, isolate ourselves, fight, and then forget that there's still a game to be played out there.
Still got 2 outs.
That's right. And so as you think about these 3 phrases, because I've just talked way too much, stay calm, stay connected, stay the course. Let's talk about stay calm. So not being a slave to your emotions. How do we, number 1, model that for our kids? And then number 2, how do we help our kids in those moments where they want to just be driven by their feelings? What do you guys think there?
Well, there's a lot of being driven by your feelings and culture. So I think this is maybe one of the hardest things. Although I don't know, the second one's pretty tough too. But we're in the phase where everything is like a huge emotional breakdown when something happens. So this is probably the most glaring one in my life right now. And what I have learned is our tendency as parents is also to get annoyed or upset with something, and we have to really fight that so that we can model not overreacting and not allowing our emotions to drive it, because that's the first things that our kids are going to see. So instead, when they're upset and they're just losing their minds, I can just be even keeled. And eventually, they realize that going crazy town does not get them anywhere.
Right.
But B,
don't get on that bus.
Right. I'm like, this is not helping you. But B, that also teaches them over time, like their reactions change because they see how we're reacting. So I think that's the more that we can, especially when we see things that make us upset, whatever it is that's kind of our trigger.
Well, and a lot of times that's going to be how we react to their behavior.
Exactly.
So that's
our reaction to their reaction.
Yeah, it's like sometimes as a parent, you're so frustrated or so mad because of what you see in and out of your child in that moment. You fly off the handle.
Right.
And so what you're demonstrating to them is, I guess if dad feels it, he follows it, And if we think they're not going to emulate that, we're just mistaken.
Yes.
It starts really early too when you've got kids. When they begin to walk or they're trying to stand up or whatever, it's you have to posture yourself. I mean, my mom is like, she gets freaked. She loves these grandbabies. And it's like, hey, you got to chill, man. All they did was fall right here on the carpet, and they might have tapped that block with their head. But look, hold on. And so when they fall, you're just kind of, let's see what's up. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. Hop back up. You're okay. And I mean, you start normalizing them to you're gonna fall. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna fall a lot. You ride a bike. You're gonna fall a lot. You're gonna have friendships. You're gonna fall a lot. And so even just normalizing things that happen in the world, like we had dinner last night or night before. We just said we all were kind of tired. We just said high low.
Yeah.
And so whatever their highs were, and then one of mine said, the low was these boys were just acting crazy and in class they were just being really disrespectful. I went, well, that's just normal.
It's a couple of days.
That's probably every day.
Right.
And because it's like because we can focus on lows too. Sure. It's like,
oh yeah,
let me find my low. It's like,
What if I didn't really have one? It was a pretty good day.
Yeah, I mean, is that really a low?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You had some kid acting like a moron. Well, that's some boy. It'll be Wednesday and Thursday. And so I mean, it's like yesterday. We went to that game, that high school game, and that coach never stopped talking.
Yeah. It's white noise.
And if you're a player, man, you can't even. You're in a place where you've practiced so much, you've played all these games, you've done all this stuff, you've gotten to the Sweet 16 tournament, and this coach doesn't stop yelling or giving them instructions. It's like, hey, they've been on the court, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they don't know 2 means you're 2-3 zone by now.
Yeah,
you
and you're
probably
saying
don't
it
have to
16
say it 8
times.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we could hear him pretty far up. You know, in lower arena, it was like, good golly, these boys, what they have to do is tune you out.
You can't play, bro.
Right.
They only got 5 on the court, and you're grown. You've exceeded your eligibility, and I don't think you'd be very good out there.
That's
either.
right.
So let them play and coach them when you need to, but. That's a little bit of the metaphor of parenting.
Yes.
We're just always yelling.
Overcoaching.
And then I don't even know what do I need to do in this next second.
Yeah.
We got to give them room.
Yeah, exactly. Because then they actually don't know what to do because they're used to you telling them what to do at all times. You know, it's interesting you bring up the focusing on the low thing. So funny story from last night. My youngest had baseball practice over at Shiloh. And it was like 2 hours long, and so I decided, well, I'm gonna walk around this track here for a little while, get some steps in.
Disc golf.
Yeah, I know. I was looking for Vandy.
Go slap some discs out of people's hands.
Yeah. And they're out there, man. Right. They're all. There was also a dude on an electric skateboard, and it had like a remote control. And I kid you not.
Talking about building resilience.
I was so befuddled. You all should be proud of me because everything in me wanted to clothesline this dude because he gets out. So he's going, it's a circle. You know, he goes the opposite way from me.
He's coming around pretty hot.
Bro, I was like 500 yards up and he's already back. He's going whizzing past me. I'm like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
Is this? It's not exercise.
Yeah, it's not.
No.
So, but it was funny. Anyway, I come back to the batting cages. They're done with field practice, and one of my best friends is the coach of the team and known him for forever. And his youngest son comes up to me before I have talked to anybody, and he's asking me for Advil. He's like, Mr. Scott, do you have any Advil? I was like, man, don't be soliciting me for drugs. What do you don't need any Advil. I'm giving him a hard time. Like, first of all, no. Secondly, you're 9 years old. You don't need Advil for anything. Yeah. And so he kind of, laughs and walks away. So I go over to my buddy. I'm like, hey man, your kid's asking me for drugs. He's like, oh, well, actually, he got hit in the forehead by a baseball. Bad hop had hit him in field practice, and my friend actually said, like, go ask Scott if he'll give you.
Nah, you're
and
fine.
I'm just wearing the poor kid out, So it's like, oh, I feel terrible now.
See that dirt? Rub some on it.
So I go back over to him. I say his name. I go, hey man, I'm really sorry. Let me see. He pull his hat up, and it doesn't look too bad or anything. But what was interesting was, when I drew attention to it, he actually got a little mopey about it.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, it really, his whole countenance changed.
Oh, yeah.
Versus when I told him he was fine, he actually walked away kind of laughing.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it was really interesting that if you, to use that word, I think we used in the last podcast, ruminate on it, it can actually incentivize negative emotion. And so it then prohibits your ability to push through because he was fine.
I mean, you see that in see that in little kids.
Yeah.
They fall down and they look at you to see what their reaction should be. That doesn't really change.
Yeah, if they see panic in your eyes, all of a sudden they think they should cry.
Right.
That's right.
But if you're laughing, even if they have smacked their head on something, they will start to laugh. And I mean, my kids still, they're looking to me to see my reaction. It's just less obvious now. So
You're sitting back smoking a cigarette.
That's really
got to get that rasp.
But when kids get their feelings hurt, or a friendship goes sideways, or they study and they only get a C-, or they try it for a team, they don't make it, or they're just not getting the playing time that they would like, or they go, hey, I'd love to go to this college, and they don't get in. These are opportunities for us to not freak out and to teach them they don't have to freak out. And there may be some perspective that we can help them garnish from it. Hey, so why do you think that happened? What lessons can you take from it? What were some things that did you do your best? What could you have done differently or better? What was outside of your control? What are some helpful things that you can do to process this? What truth or what promises has God given you in His Word? And there are times where we point them towards Scripture, or we just go, hey, what do you think God's telling you to do in this situation?
Yes.
You know, I mean, I had a situation with my oldest who was in high school, and she was, I don't know if I mentioned this story, and I apologize if I have, but she was at homecoming, she's waving some girls, and these girls waved back, and then her friend said, hey, all those girls talk about you behind your back. And she's like, so she tells us about it. I'm like, hey, so what do you think you ought to do? And we've taught them to stand up for themselves. We taught them, hey, you can teach people how you want to be treated. You should stand up for yourself. You should stand up for others. And if you still have problems, you can talk to a trusted adult. But she processed about it for about 24 hours, and then we went to a wedding in Louisville. On our way back, we were just talking about it. And I said, hey, what do you think you're going to do? What do you think God's telling you to do? Yeah. So she got home, and she made 7 phone calls.
Good for her.
It's hard to do.
I mean,
that's a lot.
As a high school student.
That's a lot.
And she's like, hey, I mean, even just her posture was, hey, I don't know. This is what I've heard. I just want to, I care about you. I love you enough. Is there something that I've done? She started with herself. And I even said, hey, listen, it's probably going to be that these girls are just intimidated, or they're insecure about you, or because you don't live in a circle, you just create your own, or you hang out with guys and you don't have any weird agenda with them. Right. You know, you're fun. And so that's what she found out. But at the end of each of those phone calls, she's like, hey, listen, I just want you to know I love you. I forgive you. If I've ever done anything, please come right to me. And I'd appreciate you valuing our friendship enough to not share this with others, because I've got some other phone calls to make.
Yeah.
You know, with every one of my kids, I could probably rattle off some stories of times where I've had to say, hey, do you want me to intervene in this? Yeah. And it's been interesting because the answers have been both yes and no at different times. Yeah. More often, no. Yeah. You know, and I think it's created some confidence in them to be able to go, the answer is no, Dad, but if something changes, it's good to know that you're willing. Yeah. And that's what I've tried to communicate, because there's actually been times where I can think of instances with my 14-year-old or some others of the kids where I'm a little more hot about something than even he is.
Right.
And I've gone, hey, you know, just say the word, you know, and he's going, easy. Yeah. He's like, I got
It's fun
it.
when he turns around and does a little parenting on his own.
You know,
I'm going outside.
That's right. I'm out there kicking dirt and throwing rocks.
Yelling into the
Just
woods.
let me call the principal. You know? So, yeah, it's a good, I think, exercise to go into with kids, to say to them, do you want my help? You know, just like even in marriage, where you go, are you asking for my thoughts, or you just need me to listen right now? Are you asking for my help?
It's an important marriage question.
It sure is.
Don't breeze past that.
It's true for kids too. You know, and so I think the more we can give confidence, hey, I'm here. I'm your parent. I'm backstop. If things get crazy, I'll be right beside you or in front of you if needed. Yeah. But until then, you know, you tell me. Yeah. You know, can you go talk to that person like you just described, Scott? Can you send that email that you need to send? Can you challenge that authority figure in your life and feel okay about it? You know, it's been a good exercise. Anything else on stay calm?
I feel like we could talk about that forever.
I know.
It's just helping them from the very beginning. Go, hey, life is not going to be fair. It ain't always going to go your way. You don't have all the gifts. You're gonna. I mean, not saying this, but you're gonna suck at certain things. You have to say that to them. But you're gonna be great at certain things, and then you're gonna make mistakes. And the reality is, we learn from a lot of mistakes. I think we think that, you know, if we're not careful, we'll put this bar up so high that they always have to achieve, or they always have to get A's. It's like, hey, I want you to do your best. Yeah. You are not your grades. You are not how good you can hit a baseball, or how good you are at whatever. I mean, that's the reality. And so it's like, you know, it's like I've quoted so many sports analogies to my kids, but like Michael Jordan, you know, he's the GOAT. You know, he says, you know, this quote from failure. He says, I've missed more than 8,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. That's why I succeed. Yeah. And that dude, 6 NBA championships, 6 final MVPs, 5 NBA MVPs, 14 All-Stars, 9 times all-defensive first team, Olympic gold medalist. Failure's a part of the story. And if we can help our kids understand and go, hey, these are okay, man. Listen, what can we learn from it? How do we stand up? How do we move? That type of. But we got to stay calm. We do. We have to stay calm.
Well, and what they see us do is what they'll do. So again, the playing field's an easy one. But it could be anything. You mess up, and if our kids mess up, they fail, they make mistakes. If we lose our minds, they're going to lose their minds too. Yep. So the stay connected piece is relational. So when things get difficult, oftentimes that's in the context of a relationship. You gave a good example. That was a good example of her staying connected. She's actually moving towards those friends as opposed to going, well, okay, fine, I'll just isolate, which would be the typical MO of any high school kid to go, all right, well, if they talk about me behind my back, I'll just talk about them and I'll stop talking to them, So how can we model and then challenge our kids to stay connected relationally when things get difficult?
Mm-hmm.
I think the conflict resolution that's outlined in Matthew is just generally good advice for everyone. Yes. But I think especially in this, as we're teaching our kids to be able to do things like stand up for themselves and whatnot, and instead of running away from problems, whether that's to other people and talking about it or off on their own, being willing to confront those things. Because I don't think I know some people like conflict, but
I don't like it.
She kind of mean that way.
Like
people think I do too. I don't like it. I just have embraced it. I've embraced it. It's just normal, and we have to help our kids understand.
I was going to say, because I don't like. Yeah. Typically, I'm not going to run in and be like all in your face. I'm going to approach it with a different mindset, but it's still beneficial.
Yeah, you're still doing conflict,
right? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I think conflict has gotten a negative connotation also. So. But that's one of the things that I'm trying to, there are always kids that my girls are like, well, they don't like me, or they try to get me in trouble, or they say these things that are awful or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, firstly, you can say something to them about that. That's okay. Well, I don't want to. I'm like, okay, well, I have to obviously show you that I'm doing that in my own life because otherwise you're never going to see that modeled. So trying to do that and just talk about situations. Like that's one of my kids' favorite questions. When did you go through something like this? Yeah. Okay, let's talk about it. Right. Let's talk about the things, maybe without all the extra details, but let's talk about it.
But we would always do these, I remember Ava coming home, some kid didn't like her backpack. And so we just would, all of a sudden, we just start role playing. Yeah. Hey, listen, I think your backpack looks stupid. Yeah. And she's like, I'm like, what do you say? Yeah. She's like, do you like your backpack? She's like, yeah. I'm like, well, tell me. I like my backpack. Yeah. Okay. Well, I still think it's stupid. She's like, well, that's your opinion. Yeah. Like, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. And
which is hard to do because it's so easy to revert back and go, so the thing you say is, well, I don't like your face. Your
mama. I hate your mama's backpack. I mean,
because it'll work.
Well, you do have to be careful because when you're quick, you can teach quick kids. And when you shoot bullets, you shoot a lot of them, and so you got to be careful. But it is teaching them, hey, listen, you don't have to take anything from people. Listen, we can love people well, but you can stand up for yourself for sure. And if they'll do that earlier, and they learn how to do this a little bit, then you know what, that bully. Here's the deal: when you move towards somebody, they go, I'm gonna go find somebody else to do that to, and I ain't coming back this direction, So,
well, I do think that conflict gets a bad rap, and I think part of that is because we've created a culture where it's expected and rewarded to not go to the person you have the conflict with, both in the corporate mindset. We don't do Matthew 18. There are people who think Matthew 18 doesn't apply.
It's easier to go to somebody else.
Like, I can just go to HR and complain about that person, or I can go around them, and there's no caveat in Jesus's teaching on that. Like, he doesn't go, except if you work at IBM. Right. Yeah. It's just not the way it works. Now, there's a path, that involves bringing other people in, but not until you've gone to that person first. Yeah. And so I think we've been conditioned to avoid conflict. Yes. Yeah. And, I don't know who said it first, but the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. So when you just go, I don't even care about that person enough to address this with them, or to even tell them that I've got an issue with them, or that they've clearly got an issue with me, then that's a very unloving thing to do. And so, as hard as it is to help, to push our kids back toward people when they have some sort of disconnect relationally, it's so worth it.
Yeah. Well, and like, I've got one that her her bar for friendship is really high.
Yeah.
And so whenever you don't meet that, then you're not her friend anymore. I'm like, hey, listen, man, we got to put it lower because everybody, including you, you're not going to do this perfectly. And so if your definition of this, you're going to cycle through them and you're not going to have very many.
Right.
And that matters. And so learning how to teach them to stay connected to Jesus in the midst of all this as well. And it's going, hey, this happened, whatever this adversity, a breakup, whatever that is. Hey, does any of this change anything about who God is and what he promises and what he's willing to do? The answer is no.
Yeah, and I won't sing, the old country song.
Give it to me, man.
You find out who your friends are.
Oh, I had to sing that one.
Yeah, I did. I made you sing that one years ago. That's right. It's a good
my
one.
Country debut.
That's right. Well, now that you say that, we need to look for another opportunity.
Please don't pull the tape.
That's a tough realization.
Yeah.
Is to go. Sometimes you're a better friend to others than they are to you.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that's just. Sometimes that's a matter of character or all kinds of things, but that's a harsh reality to face.
Whatever.
And to be able to look at your kids and go, hey, throughout life, you're going to repeatedly learn this lesson that when things get difficult and things get hard, you find out who your friends really are. When it's no longer advantageous for whatever reason to be your friend, that's when you find out who the real ones are. Now, what kind of friend do you want to be?
That's the flip side. I was going to say we also have to be teaching them that we see the Lord in other people. Because I think that's just as valuable and it's going to keep them just as connected because it's very easy to get annoyed with something or frustrated or whatever and to let that bitterness or that resentment fester instead of seeing them as a creation of God. So that's one of the things, I think I told you all this, we pray with our kids every morning, give you opportunity to be kind to other people and to show the Lord to other people because that's who we want to be, even if they're awful to us.
Right. Everybody's got a story.
Yeah.
And it doesn't excuse their actions
reasons,
or behavior.
not excuses, but reasons.
But there's a good chance if we're working really hard on our end, they're around people that may not have exactly the same things. And so sometimes those kids just need a friend.
Yeah.
And you know what? It ain't an easy friendship, but you put the work in and pray for them and just be mindful and see them.
Someone once said, friends are friends forever.
Boy, well, look at you. Have you been up really? Did you get up super early this morning?
What a throwback.
Actually, I got up super early this morning. We had an elders meeting early.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah. Years ago, I preached on friendship way back in Colorado, and I made our band do a medley of like 6 different songs all throughout my sermon, and they were all like, a lot of them were cheesy songs. You got a friend in me. All those songs. I made you do that too.
Yeah.
So
I made you.
Yeah, don't
you
you
have no choice.
Don't you worry. It could come out again. Hey, as we begin to wrap up, let's think about stay the course.
Okay.
Stay the course, and basically at the end of the day, it just means don't quit. Don't give up. Remember, we're aiming at something here, and don't bail on that process. So when we're thinking about, obviously the big picture is we want to glorify and honor Jesus in everything we do. We want to reach lost and broken people. We want to join him in his mission to seek and save the lost. Yeah. All of that is the big, huge target name of our life in the macro level. In the micro level, what we're talking about in this podcast is we just want to build resilient, strong kids.
Yeah.
And so, man, the only way to get there is to not quit. Yeah. And so whether that's in the context of things like, hey, I know you've decided you hate, playing the saxophone, you committed to it. Yep. So we're not quitting until it's finished. Yep. Right. You thought you might like soccer and you don't, but hey, you're on the team, and before the next season we can reevaluate, but you don't quit in the middle. You don't take your ball and go home because you signed up for something. And so I do think, again, that's a great opportunity for us to look in the mirror and go, where am I demonstrating to my kids that I give up if things get hard? And that can be kind of a painful question, for a lot of parents, but I think it's worth asking. Anything else stand out to you guys in regards to stay the course?
Well, one of the things that I feel like is, in order to stay the course, you have to be secure in your identity. So for us as parents, we have to know who we are in the Lord. And then we have to reinforce that in our kids. But I also think just modeling prayer is a big deal for this one, because there are times where it just gets so tough that you're like, am I even going the right way? I don't even know.
Right. Yeah.
Like, there's no blinking red light telling me go this direction, you know. So I'm just hoping that the doors that are opening are the right ones, and I'm just going to walk through them. Being able to model that for your kids will then teach them, I think, to rely on the Lord when things do get tough, which will then reinforce who they are in Him, which will then allow them to be resilient in those hard times. Yeah. So, you know, with all this move stuff, there's been a lot of ups and downs. And are we supposed to do this? Because we were not planning on moving at this time. It kind of came out of nowhere. And I know it seems like a superficial thing, but we're actually doing it because, you know, we're going to be closer to Chuck's parents. It's really beneficial for a lot of people.
It's purposeful. Yep.
Yes. But also, had we saved to do this? No, we had not. We were a year out from where we thought we were going to be to do this. So there was a whole lot of prayer. And I mean, daily prayer, just... Is this what we're supposed to do? If it is, would you, you know, make sure that we know today that we're walking the right way, or tell us or slam a door if it is not the right thing to do? And my kids were involved in that too. We prayed with them every day about it so they could see those things. So my hope is later in life when they're going through something similar or something worse, you know, they turn to the Lord first, because then they can hold strong and they're not swayed.
Yeah, and it probably needs to be said. There's a time to make a big boy decision, big girl decision, and say, "I'm moving on. You know, I'm not gonna play for you anymore. I'm not gonna work for you anymore.
I'm not gonna date you
anymore. I'm not gonna join you in this anymore." And so I do think, depending upon oftentimes the personality of a child, they can stubbornly stay the course in something that they need to actually move away from because they just don't want to be a quitter. And that could be a dating relationship, which can become a real problem. Yes. And that could be in the future, it could be a boss that you go, hey, that's just a bad leader. You don't need to follow a bad leader, you know, or you're not about the mission of this place that you're a part of anymore. God's calling you to something else.
Hey, you work at Taco Bell. You're not going to work there forever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's okay. Live Moss is not really the best motto for your life.
That's right. Unless you plan on owning one.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
I mean, the other side of it too is you're talking about parenting. We have to impart places where we've not done this well.
Yeah.
You know, there's you know, or where we push through. You know, where we surrendered something that was really hard, but we trusted God and didn't know what was on the other side of it. You know, that matters. And there's so many examples in the Bible, you know, that, you know, if you begin to kind of go, you know, where is resilience in the Bible? It's in so many places. You know, immediately when I start thinking about it, I'm like, well, Joseph in the Old Testament, his story is such a roller coaster, and it never seems to get good until the very, very end. You know. Moses, I mean, so reluctant. He struggled to believe when God called him and wants to use him. He goes, "You're not, no, not me, not me." He's like,
My brother can do it.
Yeah, but he's like, no, I want you. You know, but I stutter, all blah blah blah, all these different things. He goes, no, I want to use you. You know, David, you know, with Goliath, it's like everybody's afraid for so many days, and he pushes through, you know, he takes the tools that God gave him.
I just always love that picture of him like going to the battlefield. Goliath comes out and taunts Israel, and David's just standing there like with the cheese that he's been brought to deliver.
Yes.
His brother's like,
subs. Yeah.
Has this dude been doing this every day?
Yeah.
How come y'all haven't shut him up yet? You know, they're like, hey man, you want to shut him up?
Yeah. And then Saul's even trying to put off. Saul's over there scared to death, knees knocking. He's trying to give him his armor. He's like, I can't wear this, man. Yeah. You know, I'm going in with what God gave me, which is really empowering. Yes. Another thing is the book of Job. Yeah. We live in a world where there's so much, there's so much outside of our control. The enemy said, hey, I want to weigh Joe. And God was like, Job. And God's like, all right, well, there's just some stipulations. And then he just goes after him, you know. Peter, an amazing example of a man that God uses who makes all kinds of mistakes, not just at the end when he denies Jesus 3 times, but you know, who's the first to preach that gives life to this beautiful thing known as the church? It's Peter, you know. And then you got Paul.
Yep.
You know, crazy as can be and zealous as could be, and then God gets a hold of him. And then Jesus, of course, all the adversity he went through, adversity with people, adversity with Satan and demons, adversity in the world.
Paul's such a great example of that, man. It's fresh on my mind because I'm going to work through a little bit of this on Easter, which, you know, that this will be in retrospect probably when people hear this. But, you know, I mean, basically, Paul's going, you don't think I went through all this for nothing, do you?
Yeah.
I didn't fight wild beasts and go through.
Stay the course, man.
Yeah, it's because I know that on the other side of this is resurrection. I know it.
Yeah.
Because I've met the risen Jesus. And so that's the end of the story for our kids. Is this life is all about Jesus, and if anything, Jesus demonstrated for us it was his willingness to stay the course. He set his face like flint towards Jerusalem and walked through some pain and agony, all for redemptive purpose. And so we've benefited from that in eternal ways. And so the cool thing is we get to be a part of that in smaller ways that are part of an eternal purpose. And so we could talk about this all day, but I've got my little timer going off here because we've got things to do, places to go.
Yeah.
We're on mission. So also the NCAA tournament starts today.
That's right.
Oh, okay. I see. I have an actual meeting.
I do too.
Okay.
But it's at a place where I'm sure there'll be a television.
Oh, okay. I see.
Stay calm.
Stay connected.
Stay the course. Oh, I should have gave that to you. Let's do that again. Ready? Stay calm.
Stay connected.
Stay the course.
Good job. Peace
A lot
out.
of music in this one today.
So good.